All right, we're out here talking about some of the research we've been doing on corn with respect to nitrogen. Obviously, nitrogen is a very important macronutrient. Farmers put a lot of money into it every year, and so we want to make sure we're using it wisely. Mark's going to show you some of the things that we see when we look at nitrogen deficiency in corn late season.
Yeah, so kind of where we're at now, the corn's getting to milk or dough stage. If we are nitrogen deficient, we're starting to see some of these lower leaves turn brown. Typically, it starts out as a V pattern in the leaf. We don't see that here. But then, if it gets severe, you lose that whole lower leaf, and really the whole plant kind of has a yellow coloration to it. So that's something that means you're probably underfeeding that plant. You do need to look at your nitrogen management practices. You can kind of compare that to, what a more healthy plant looks like in terms of nitrogen. You can see green leaves really all the way to the bottom, a nice healthy green color to the plant. That probably means we've got adequate nutrition there, and that's really, I think, what you're looking for, but we do have to be careful to make sure that we're being efficient with our nitrogen management practices.
Yep, and so some of the research that we've done here at the Learning Center is looking at that all up front, or the fertigation or spoon feeding over time. And so we're actually standing in front of our subsurface drip irrigation system where we can spoon feed the nitrogen through those subsurface drip tubes that are below the surface. And for the most part, that typically gives us the best response, as long as we get enough additional nitrogen out on that corn at the beginning of the season. So again, splitting it up, maybe half down early at planting, followed up by the rest of the nitrogen spoon-fed over the growing season. However, we have had some fertigation studies where it did not get enough nitrogen out early, and so the corn was actually getting deficient and it was robbing the stalk, and so we had very spindly stalks out there compared to our corn where we had the all up front. And so we also saw a reduction in yield from that. So obviously, we have to manage, back to what Mark was saying, you got to find the right management system, but you really have to be cognizant. You got to get that corn started off on the right foot and make sure that you got at least half of that nitrogen out there early, in case you do run into some situations where we get delayed. But what about application rate, Mark?
So the application rate work that we do really is kind of updating that research that you get in terms of, from a soil lab you get a recommendation. So we're going through and looking at 0 pounds, 60, 120, all the way up to 300 pounds of nitrogen per acre. We know that 300 is likely an over application, and we put that in there though just to kind of fill out that curve of having too little nutrient obviously at 0 and 60 and having too much at 300. We're really trying to find that economic optimum rate in our fields, and what we typically find is we do actually achieve the highest yields at 300 bushels per acre or 300 pounds of nitrogen per acre, but that's not really our goal. Our goal is, what's that economic rate? And we don't always get a lot of return to that extra nitrogen. We typically find in the range of 180 to 240 pounds of nitrogen per acre is that economic optimum, depending on, it doesn't really matter if we're looking at corn or soybean ground. That tends to be the range that we find here for our soils, that rate of nitrogen that makes the most sense.
And so one of the other things we always get asked by farmers is understanding how corn products respond to nitrogen. Are there differences there? And so we've kind of taken a step back from that and went through there and characterized these corn products by some different attributes. So one would be a late season intactness or greenness at the end of the growing season. The other would be ear flex. Okay, so we've paired some corn products in these groups, and we're looking at that all up front versus the fertigation or spoon feeding of those corn products over the growing season. So we think that this type of research will provide some valuable insights to our farmers as they go through there and try to manage corn, because we suspect that we're going to find some big differences on how these different attributes interact with that nitrogen. Any other final thoughts, Mark?
Just that, obviously nitrogen is one of those biggest decisions that you have to make. It can be one of the most expensive pieces of your agronomic system for corn. We want to make sure that we keep updating the research on our corn products, kind of keep getting a better handle and understanding how the products respond to nitrogen out in the field.
So please take a look at our 2020 research results. That'll be coming out in February, because we should have a lot of research in there dealing with nitrogen.
Thanks for watching this video from the Gothenburg Water Utilization Learning Center. For more information, please call 308-537-4500.